example, a presentation that we have scheduled, but what we would ask is that we would refrain from any official discussions in relation to that presentation, because again, that usually leads to some more official conversations, and then we can have our report at the conclusion that we do for each of our monthly meetings, and then we would close the meeting. That works for everyone. That way we can move forward. Works for
Good evening. I will now call the Equity Council Committee meeting to order. The time is 6:45 p.m. Pursuant to KRS Chapter 61, notice is hereby given that a quorum of the Equity Council Committee members, a standing committee of Fayette County Board of Education, has scheduled its regular meeting on January 6, 2026 from 6:30 to 7:45 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. This meeting will be live streamed at fcps.net for public viewing. Pursuant to KRS 61.8262B, the John D. Price Building, 450 Park Place, room 150A, is hereby designated as the primary location of the meeting.
Before we move forward, I'd like to make an announcement that we are still waiting for a quorum, and in lieu of continuing to postpone, we're going to begin the meeting in hopes that we will eventually receive more members so that we can have an official quorum, but we will move forward with non-action items for the ECC this evening.
Thank you. We will now move to the reading of our mission statement by Equity Council Committee member Trace Williams.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to our new members. The mission of the Equity Council is to monitor and analyze equity issues, advise the Fayette County Board of Education, and advocate for achievement for all students.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. Next, ECC members will take a moment to read and acknowledge our guiding principles, which are located in your binder. Members, please verbally acknowledge our guiding principles by saying, "I acknowledge."
I acknowledge.
I acknowledge. Thank you, council members. At this time, we would like to welcome our guests with us this evening. We have Dr. Bill Bradford with Fayette County Public Schools and Amanda Goforth with the 16th District PTA. Welcome. Next on our agenda is public participation. Do we have any, Lizzie?
No, we do not.
All right. So due to us not having a quorum right now, we will skip our action items and go right along to discussion items. And what we will have is our kindergarten readiness and third grade reading update presentation by Dr. Bill Bradford.
Good evening. Thank you for letting me visit you tonight. I have an update for 2 of your 4 primary strategies embedded within your scorecard. We are going to discuss this evening kindergarten readiness and third grade reading proficiency. And I want to start by aligning this body of work with our portrait of a graduate. Very discreetly, there is a very tight connection between our portrait of a graduate, specifically the promise of a lifelong learner, and that of third grade reading and kindergarten readiness. Specifically, one of our promises incorporates the mantra that we will connect and apply knowledge and skills across experiences. And in the school district, we have mapped out milestones by grade level bands as to how this would look at different developmental ages across the system. So by the end of third grade, for example, by the end of fifth grade, by the end of eighth grade, etc. And so very specifically, by the end of third grade, we have articulated 2 specific goals that are related to reading proficiency in kindergarten readiness. The first has to do with applying knowledge and skills to new contexts or new tasks. And then the other would be for students to be able to articulate a clear idea with relevant details. Now, it goes without saying that our reading proficiency in third grade, as well as kindergarten readiness, is very tightly aligned also to our strategic plan. As you're well aware, we are in year 4 of implementation of our strategic plan, and the area of student achievement is really highly correlated to this body of work. Specifically, of course, our objective is to improve or increase student achievement, but within our strategic plan, each one of our 5 priorities, we have a multitude, really multiple activities that are essentially deliverables for us as it relates to that specific priority of our strategic plan. And there are 3 in particular within student achievement that specifically refer to kindergarten readiness and third grade reading proficiency. And those include that of evidence-based literacy models, which is one of our priority efforts in this academic school year specifically. Early literacy and numeracy goals. Now, this is for all learners, but it's very targeted for those with individual education plans, meaning those with disabilities, as well as our English learning students, where English is not their native language. And then also supports for kindergarten students who don't enter our school system, quote unquote, ready, which we will talk about that momentarily. So I'm going to dive right into kindergarten readiness and what kindergarten readiness looks like in Fayette County Public Schools as well as across the Commonwealth. We utilize a tool that we refer to as a kindergarten entry screener. We really appreciate acronyms and short terminology in our profession, so you'll often see this referred to as a K-screen. This is a requirement by the Kentucky Department of Education. It is actually included within Kentucky Regulatory Statute, KRS. And specifically, we aim to identify our children's needs and strengths when they enter the public school system in kindergarten, as well as to allow us to tier instruction as well as interventions for students when they become under our tutelage. So every state who has a kindergarten entry screener has the opportunity to select their vendor, for lack of a better term. In Kentucky, the Brigance kindergarten screener is our tool of choice. And we call this the common kindergarten entrance screener because this is the common screener applied across all schools in the state of Kentucky for all kindergarten students that are incoming into the school system. And it evaluates students in 5 distinct areas: their academic cognitive, their language development, their physical development, their development overall, and then their self-help and social emotional development. And those 5 areas in particular align to 2 very important evidence-based models. The first is the Kentucky School Readiness definition. So what does it mean to be ready for kindergarten? And then number 2, the Kentucky Early Childhood Standards. Those are essentially the Kentucky academic standards, but for our students at the pre-kindergarten level. So we utilize this data in a variety of ways, and here is how the data currently reflects for Fayette County Public Schools. So on the table, you will see on the left-hand side the last 8 years of data reflected for Fayette County Public Schools, with the bottom-most year being reflective of the current readiness rate for Fayette County. And then on the right-hand side, you see the percentage of students who are deemed kindergarten ready. And I will remind you that this is a percentage of students who are ready when you combine with an algorithmic formula each of those 5 areas that the K-screen or the Brigance screener assesses and evaluates students in. So I'll draw your attention to in 25-26, which is the current academic school year, our reporting rate of readiness is 48%. So that would be that 48% of students have come into Fayette County Public Schools at the kindergarten level, ready for instruction. The other 52% of students can be essentially interpreted as ready with either enrichments or ready with interventions. So all students are ready to learn. They're just all ready to learn at different levels and at different times. And so it becomes our responsibility to meet them where they are. You'll notice that within the last 2 academic school years, our readiness rate has been consistent. And then, of course, you see a reflection of where we were, or where we have been, in 2019-20 through the current academic school year. What is probably of significant importance to this particular committee is our kindergarten readiness rates by student subgroup populations. Sure. Oh, sure. So you'll recognize that in the 2020-2021 school year has an asterisk. And that asterisk refers to the fact that that was a COVID implementation year in terms of evaluating our students. We assess students with the Brigance Kindergarten Screener immediately upon entry in the state of Kentucky. So that would mean in July or August. Essentially, you have within the first 30 school days to complete that Brigance Kindergarten Screener. In the 2021 school year, which was our school year returning from COVID, essentially, or really in the height of the COVID global pandemic, we were permitted to evaluate students with the Brigance Kindergarten Screener throughout the entirety of the academic school year, which could include upwards of the May through July range of 2021. So the rate of 71% shows that students are inherently ready for kindergarten, but you would expect that because they received kindergarten level instruction for the bounty of that particular academic school year. I hope that helps. So on the slide that follows, this is our kindergarten entry screener data by student subgroup. So each of the student subgroups that we receive data for are listed on the left-hand side, and their rates of kindergarten readiness are reported on the right. All students are your top row, which is at 48%, consistent with the slide that you were able to review beforehand. Then you'll notice that our subgroup populations are divided by gender, demographic area, as well as educational enhancement area. A few of these are specifically bolded because they are student subgroup populations that we monitor most closely based on the data trends that we are responding to in Fayette County Public Schools with a certain level of intensity. Those include our Black African American students, our students with disabilities. Our students with disabilities are issued an individual education plan. So that is what that IEP stands for. And then, of course, our English learners as well. Each of these student subgroup populations has immense value to the organization, but we simply wanted to bring your attention to those that we have significant interventions in place to support their increased achievement. Then the same data is reported here, but in trend format. So you're able to see a comparison between each of our student subgroup populations in their kindergarten readiness rate over the course of the last 3 academic school years. And so of note would be the student subgroup populations that are bolded, our African American students, our students with disabilities, and our English learning students who either demonstrated consistency from this past year to this year, or in the case of students with disabilities, a slight improvement from the year prior. So for us, this rate of readiness translates to how we use the data instructionally. It helps us to determine their developmental skills. As I mentioned before, we have a responsibility, no matter how a student enters the school system, to meet them exactly where they are and to accelerate their growth and achievement based on their current level of readiness. And so for us, this data helps to determine how to differentiate instruction and meet students where they are, no matter where they are on the trajectory. We also are able to use tiered instruction models. And so for us, that's referring to our multi-tiered system of supports in which we apply intense interventions for students that demonstrate that they need more supports. And of course, that would lead ultimately to the most intensive levels of support, which could then mean supports with our English language learning students, such as PSPs, which are program service plans, or individual education plans for students with disabilities. We also provide targeted professional learning, and we do so for our preschool teachers and within our early child education department, so that we can begin to embed kindergarten readiness skills within their program. But we also apply similar professional learning modules to our kindergarten teachers, because their responsibility really is, it's a duality. They have the responsibility to teach on grade level kindergarten academic standards, while also remediating and intervening upon students who have entered their classrooms not ready to begin with. And then by all means, our parents are our greatest asset. They clearly know their children better than we do, but we certainly have a piece to the child's overall puzzle. So communicating with parents what this data means from the Brigant's kindergarten screen allows for both parties, the school system and the families at home, to be able to really work together to determine how to meet the needs of students in moving forward. So from here, I'll transition to third grade reading, because this is one of your other significant priorities within your scorecard. And with third grade reading, we focus on one particular assessment, and that is the Kentucky Summative Assessment. You'll often hear this assessment referred to as KSA, and this is the federal and state required assessment for all academic core content areas: reading and writing, math, science, and social studies. Specifically, the Kentucky Summative Assessment evaluates students on our Kentucky academic standards. So it's a specific Kentucky test, and it's actually developed by teachers. It is actually the only annual content area summative assessment that is given in grade 3. What I mean by that is it's the only annual end of year third grade assessment that is provided in the state of Kentucky from a holistic standpoint. Every individual school district may have their own methods and assessment measurements as well, but this is the one that unifies the whole state. It's a measure of student progress towards those academic standards. It's also a measure of student proficiency in each content area as well. And then of note for you would be that students in Kentucky are administered the KSA virtually. They complete their assessments online by and large. There are certain exceptions to that for accommodations for students who qualify as such, but by and large, all students are completing the assessment virtually and online. So this is what the Kentucky Summative Assessment looks like specifically in third grade. I am presenting to you information only related to third grade this evening. So the assessment blueprint is actually rather simple. 50% of the test is based on literary standards, so literature, fiction, for lack of a better expression. And then the other 50% is informative, informational text, more technical information in general, primary and secondary sources. The test is administered in a block of time that ranges from approximately 120 to 140 minutes. And it's administered in two parts. There's a part A and a part B. And within both of those parts combined, there are a total of 40 questions that the students need to complete. Those questions come in 4 modalities. You'll recognize 2 of them as being pretty simple to understand: multiple choice and then short answer. But our students are also provided with questions, or they are evaluated with multiple select questions. That would be a multiple choice question where there are more than one correct answers to choose from, as well as technology enhanced questions, which would be where students have to use their technology device to manipulate the responses in a way that yields a correct answer. The best example I could probably describe tonight would be a drag and drop, where you pull one word from perhaps a word box and place it into a blank, so to speak. The Kentucky Summative Assessment is evaluated using performance level descriptors. And those are commonly referred to, or in fact they are, the levels of distinguished, proficient, apprentice, and novice. So that would be your highest rating to your lowest rating. Distinguished your highest, novice your lowest. And what's most important to know about this is that we have performance level descriptors for every grade level at every content area, meaning teams of teachers from around the state have collaborated to determine what does it look like for a third grade student in reading to be proficient or distinguished. What does it look like for a seventh grade student in science to be distinguished? And there are actually descriptive language that describes what that looks like, essentially a standard, a rubric, for lack of a better expression. And for all intents and purposes for tonight's data, I want you to keep in mind that a proficient or distinguished score means, or it signifies, that a student is either meeting or exceeding grade level standards. So I thought it would be interesting for you to, before I show you the data, I thought it would be interesting for me to show you an example of what a third grade student in reading is able to do in order to score at the proficient and or distinguished level in reading. So these all derive from Kentucky academic standards, and this is what our students would need to be able to demonstrate through the Kentucky Summative Assessment in order to score distinguished or proficient. And just in summary, they need to be able to read closely. They must be able to extract explicit and implicit information from their text. They would need to be able to read a text and identify individuals, events, and ideas. We used to call those themes. We now call them main topics. They have to be able to identify parts of a text and how that contributes to the overall structure. So as a student reads, for example, maybe an informational text, being able to make sense that if I'm seeking some information about vertebrate animals, then I'm going to be looking for a subheading, perhaps, that says invertebrate, and that's going to draw my attention to that particular section of the text to find my information. They need to be able to use illustrations to get meanings from a text and be able to decipher the meaning of words and phrases within a text. And then finally, this is the most complicated part of the third grade reading standards, they need to be able to extract information from two or more texts, but what makes it a third grade standard is it would be on the same topic. So those are just examples that I thought would be really interesting for you just to have in your mind as I transition now to the actual data for our Kentucky Summative Assessment for 2025. So this is data that reflects last spring's third grade students in the state of, in Fayette County Public Schools and how they performed. And I'm going to start with the percentage of students scoring at the proficient or distinguished level. So on this particular table, if you draw your attention first to the far right-hand column, that is the 24-25 data that I was referring to. That is the most recent data. And what you see identified are student groups that we obviously, as I mentioned before, make the most attention to monitor their progress for each assessment cycle. So for all students, for example, 50% of all third grade students were proficient or distinguished in reading on the Kentucky Summative Assessment. That's how you would read that data. Then we have each of our student subgroup populations that we pay the most particular attention to are Black African American, our students with IEPs, those with disabilities, as well as our English learners. And then on this particular slide, I wanted to provide you with data on our Hispanic students. So one of the federal classifications that we receive from the federal government is that of a targeted supported intervention or comprehensive supported intervention. And schools are labeled as such if they have a discrepancy between a certain student subgroup population and how all students perform. In Fayette County Public Schools, we have three particular areas of which we have schools identified as either TSI or CSI. And those are for students with IEPs, students who identify as English learner, as well as Hispanic students. We do not, as I mentioned, I believe in the last meeting, have any discrepancies for our students that are Black African American, and we're very proud about that. So this is the percent of students performing in reading at the proficient or distinguished level over the course of the last 3 years on the Kentucky Summative Assessment. After this is now the percent of students that are performing in our lowest category in reading, and that is the novice level, if you recall. So really quickly, if you look right here at all students in the year 24-25, this means that 25% of our third grade students are not able to demonstrate these elements that I described on this particular slide. That's what that would mean here. So our students at the novice level, we are seeking to decrease the percent of novice. Whereas on the slide before, we are seeking to increase the percent of proficient and distinguished. And that's our constant goal. That is the constant trajectory and journey that we are on. And that is where we really apply all of our resources to make sure that we accomplish. So the data is formatted in the same fashion. You have all students and how third grade students performed at the novice level in KSA over the last 3 years. And then you have the same student subgroup populations listed on the left-hand side, drawing your attention to the ones that we monitor in particular and those that achieved at certain levels over the course of the last 3 years. So with this data, it leads us to a variety of supports that we are currently leveraging to do exactly what I just mentioned before, which is increase the rate of proficient distinguished and decrease the rate of students performing at the novice level. And they include strategic plans of support, specifically at all of our lower performing campuses. So for any campus that does have a certain discrepancy between how all students are performing and how certain student subgroup populations are performing, we have targeted support plans in place where we are activating and leveraging all of the resources available in our school system to provide support to teachers, administrators, and quite frankly, students to accelerate their learning and really work to close those achievement gaps. We also have a very explicit goal in our comprehensive district improvement plan that refers to closing our achievement gap and how we have structured our activities and strategies to do so. We have focused on targeted professional learning for really all employees, regardless of your role type, but specifically for our instructors and specifically to strategies that are targeted for these student subgroup populations. So for example, a vast majority of our classrooms across the system have students whose native language is not English, or English learning students. So we've really wanted to educate our instructors, our classroom teachers, on evidence-based strategies that have been proven to work for English learning students and being able to implement those in schools across all classrooms and grade levels to really make a difference in that data. We've also focused our district improvement plan on 4 areas that have gone unchanged over the last couple of years. Professional learning communities, which is really teachers collaborating with one another, sharing the genius. There's so much that is happening in Fayette County Public Schools that is outstanding. So the more that we can share with one another, the more we can share those resources and strategies and approaches across all schools within the system. We also are really focused on personalized learning, which is another way to describe differentiated instruction. So a teacher with a classroom of 24 students is really focused on how to differentiate his or her or their instruction for each student based on where they currently lie on their own learning trajectory. And we have the tools and resources, quite frankly, as a result of our board's investment, to be able to allow us to manipulate our materials, our high quality instructional resources to meet the needs of each learner no matter where they are. And that is a investment that our board has made that has really led to desirable outcomes to date. HQIR is the phrase that you often hear when someone is describing a high quality instructional resource. And what that simply means is it's an evidence-based material, textbook, that is aligned to Kentucky academic standards and has, quite frankly, reports that show that it has been impactful in other schools and other systems. And so as we have selected high quality instructional resources across Fayette County Public Schools, we have used that level of intelligence to make selections that will be the best for our population. And then I mentioned this before, but a multi-tiered systems of support, just verifying that each student's individual needs are attended to, are referred to in our strategic plan as individual plans. We want all students, to the extent possible, to only need Tier 1 instruction, which is the instruction that is delivered to all students consistently. But we recognize that not all students learn at the same time. All students can learn, but they can't necessarily all learn the same thing at the same time. So in order to differentiate that, we do tiered systems of supports. Tier 1 is all students. We really want for 80 to 85% of all students to live in Tier 1. Then we have approximately 10 to 15% of students who will need to matriculate to Tier 2 for a little higher level of intensity. And then we try and aim for only 5 to 8% of our total population to require a Tier 3 level intervention. And so we use a lot of systems to make sure that that is in place, and a lot of coaching for our educators and administrators to verify that those systems are working. And so with that, I'm not sure if I'm taking questions tonight, but certainly happy to do so.
I will clarify. I do believe that you can ask clarifying questions, but refrain from open discussion, if that makes sense.
If I may, just before any questions may be asked, I would like to clarify some things. I think it's important to note when you look at the demographics of the students when we receive students in kindergarten, one of the things you will notice when you look at the demographics of how prepared they are when they come into kindergarten, it very much mirrors how they perform thereafter. And so one of the things that the board did a few years ago was invested millions of dollars into our first 5 LEX program and partnerships with our community, because we really have no control over how we receive our kids. And so what we've put in place is various opportunities to educate our families on these are things you can do with your child in order to ensure that they're coming more prepared for kindergarten when they actually arrive. One of the things that we're seeing shifting is our demographics are changing significantly over just the past 5 years itself. Ironically, when you look at some of our lowest scores, those are also some percentage-wise some of our largest growing populations. Our fastest growing population are our English learners, which is one of our lower scores. Our second fastest population by percentage-wise is our students with IEPs, students that come in that qualify for special education services. And then thirdly, it's our Hispanic population. And so there are populations that are really, we're trying to ensure that we are on the forefront of ensuring that these students are getting what they need before they come to school, and once we receive them, really accelerating the instruction they receive. But it is, it's a testament to our teachers, to our leaders, as to all the work we're doing. We didn't do a comparison to the state, but we are one of the most diverse systems in the state of Kentucky, yet at every single one of those levels, we continue to outperform the state as well. Although those numbers, I would agree, are not, we certainly want more than 50% of our students in 3rd grade to be on track. But when we look at where we receive them, where they are, and how they compare to their peers across the state, we're making steady progress where we need.
I have 2 questions. First of all, great job as always, Dr. Bradford. I've asked this similar question before for a different examination, so forgive me if it's the exact same. For the 3rd grade reading, are students with English as their second language, are they given any support or like translators, or do they have to do the exact same examination as everybody else?
So great question. Our students who receive English language services must complete the assessment in English. They might receive accommodations, which could include paraphrasing, shortened responses, even scribes, but the assessment must be completed in our target language, which is English.
Awesome, thank you so much. And then if this bleeds into discussion, please just feel free to stop me. Are there any plans by the district or anything like that to officially elevate?
That's discussion, Trace.
Well, I just, honestly, based on what you said, Superintendent Liggins, it made me think that there are like, this might be in the works already, so, okay, I'll just want to ask it. Okay. Sorry.
What if we do this? Because we'll probably have a quorum for planning. If you will capture your question, make sure you have it. We'll have the presentation will be available for the planning. And if need be, I can invite Dr. Bradford to be there for the planning meeting. Is that okay? Excellent.
I would also, as a point of clarification, also note that our students with IEPs or who receive special education services also take the exact same test as their peers with potential accommodations as well.
just for informational purposes, more so for our newer members, I wanted to, Dr. Bradford, of course, alluded to it, but I also wanted to just elevate it in conversation for you all in knowledge that the ECC has gone through a process of identifying specific indicators that are identified within their scorecard, or I think we call it an opportunity index. So there are several indicators that are inclusive in that, but what the ECC did further was identifying 4 specific targeted indicators that they wanted to be briefed on this year, and really dive deep into how the Equity Council can further support those 4 indicators. And so those 4 are 2 that was presented this evening, which was kindergarten readiness and 3rd grade reading. The other 2 are 9th grade completion rates and graduation rates. So you'll hear a presentation down the road, probably by Dr. Bradford or maybe someone that he designates on those other 2 indicators in the future. Just wanted to provide that context.
Any more clarifying questions? My questions are discussion questions too, so they'll be at the planning meeting. I'll make sure to do that at the planning meeting, but thank you so much for your time and your presentation. Next, we will move on to our reports. We will start with the superintendent's report.
Alrighty, good evening, everyone. Happy New Year. I just have one report. We are gearing up the legislature, the General Assembly for Kentucky is beginning to meet, and we are utilizing teachers this year to go and advocate on behalf of public schools and Fayette County Public Schools. I would encourage anyone in this room, in addition to anyone that may be watching, to go and speak to your elected officials, committee members, over the Education Committee in particular. I think it's extremely important that they hear from people that are actually in the trenches doing the jobs and understanding and having kids in the systems and working on committees such as this with the school system in order for them to hear the real work. Quite often, decisions are made based off of news clips or misinformation, and so really you guys have a wealth of information that you can be able to share with them. And even if you cannot make it to meet with them, all of them have staffs that read their emails regularly, and they all have their emails available as well. So I would highly encourage that.
Thank you, Dr. Ligon. Next is our board member report by board member Amy Green.
Thanks. And so my first thing is a plug for this Saturday. Fayette County has their innovation showcase. It's from 1 to 4 at Cape Creek High School. And so it's going to be a showcase of the plethora and the ever-expanding access that our students have and our growing opportunity. So it's for all grades as well. You can see elementary options, middle school, and high school options. Also, you can find online on the calendar on fcps.net/calendar. There are a multitude of open houses that the special programs are offering. So please take a moment to see what those opportunities are, and whether or not you have a student, because you all are invested in the school system, I think it would really be an amazing opportunity for you to go walk those halls this Saturday afternoon and really see what amazing opportunities we have to offer our students. It truly is breathtaking to walk that, and there will be many students there speaking on their that is my number 1 plug. And then to share, we have a planning meeting next Monday, the 12th, and then our action meeting is January 26th. January is usually a slower month for the school board, and there's routine matters, and those include updating the board calendar. And so then I know once we do those, I think you guys kind of can take a look at yours. It's the mid-year policy and procedure update. So if you want to, you can be able to see those. If you have any questions, share those. And then also the draft budget. And so that's a very, very preliminary document, but you keep your eyes on that part of the conference.
Thank you, board member Green. Next is the Equity Council Chair update. I don't have any updates. However, I will speak to item E, which is our subcommittee report. Scott is not able to be here tonight, but he wanted everyone to know that the scorecard subcommittee has not met since the EC planning meeting, but we will have a scheduled online meeting this Thursday at 6:30 p.m. So especially to our new members, if you're interested on being on that, Equity Scorecard Committee meeting, just let me know and I will send you the information to attend that meeting. Next, we'll have our OSBS report by Dr. Matthews.
Yes, good evening. So Ms. Green actually stole mine. I was going to share about the showcase as well, but it's great enough that multiple people can say it, right? So it doesn't hurt to say it one more time. We want everyone to be a part of the showcase that will be at Taste Creek this Saturday. To our community, to all of you all, please come. I think you will really enjoy being there. Additionally, some things specifically as it relates to the ECC, just to update you, we did post yesterday, our application for the PG People's Equity Champion Award. This will be our 4th year of doing the awards with kind of some historical. The first year was our 2022 school year in which we were able to award it to Mr. PG Peoples himself. And then the following year, we awarded it to a student, Kayla Chamber Reed. And then the 3rd year, we awarded it to an Omega Psi Phi chapter, the local chapter here. And so different people from our community, and I looked tonight, we've already have some people who put some names in, so people know it's out there. We hope that the timeline is specifically we opened it yesterday, we'll close it on the 19th. We hope to have those names to you all on the 20th, which is also your planning meeting. And then what we have done in the past is after you've been given the information, kind of the packet of everyone, is we do a Google form that allows you to kind of vote on who you would like, and then we'll bring that to the regular meeting in February here on February the 3rd, where the ECC will vote on the selected candidate. And then we hope that, if allowed, that we would be able to award that individual during the regular board meeting, which is February 23rd. So that's kind of the timeline for that. Secondly, I also wanted to share that we notified the public that we have a vacancy on the ECC. So that social media bursts have gone out. Of course, the application has reopened. So if you know of anyone who is interested, we definitely want to make sure we promote getting more at least one more member. We have several people to apply, but we have one vacancy, of course. So I want to make sure that you're aware of that. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Matthew. Next is other communication. Do we have any announcement?
I would like to add, Madam Chair, that as part of the legislature agenda this year, I'm aware that there will be issues of K-12 DEI being discussed as part of their agenda, and so I know that is something that is of particular interest to the people serving on this committee. I personally believe in the true definition of equity, which is every student getting what they need in order to be successful, and that means Black, brown, white, poor kids, kids with means, gifted kids, special education kids, all kids. And that is something I personally feel we have to do as a school system to make that happen. I'm not sure if that's something that our state representatives necessarily understand or know. So your voices could very well help them understand that it is about inclusion and not exclusion. But just wanted to put that out there.
Thank you, Dr. Lick. Thank you for sharing that with us. Does anyone else have any other announcement? If not, then we can close this meeting out. We don't have a quorum for an adjournment, but it is 7:26 p.m. So thank you for your time. Good night.